well I am, with my evangelical head on, are going to say that this is a messianic passage of Isaiah, that there's a change of mood here for him, and he is talking about something that's going to happen, but is happening. So now we're in 2020, and Isaiah comes and he says this now, in the context of which we're in now. What sort of things did your conversation generate? Share some things with everybody.
Inequality.
Sorry?
Inequality, talking about the MPs that vote to cap disabled benefits while they spend £50 on breakfast.
Yeah, the inequalities of the MPs who spend £50 on breakfast, but people don't receive that benefit. So the inequalities, yes, he would certainly be saying something about that, wouldn't he? Would have no doubt about that. That comes into the justice and the righteousness of what Isaiah is saying. John? Yeah.
We did have discussions. I'd just like, if I may, to read the same passage from the message.
Oh, yes. Yes, good. I've read this. I
Obviously,
knew it.
well,
Yeah.
I found it interesting because one of my comments was the wording is still, or the meaning is still really appropriate.
Loraine.
Wording.
Yeah.
So can I just read this?
John, just come and stand on the
Just
line.
understand here. I nearly looked at this passage and used it for today, so thank you.
I hope I pick it from the correct place. But,
Yeah.
so reading it from the Message Remix version. He'll take over the ruling of the world. His names will be Amazing Counselor, Strong God, Eternal Father, Prince of Wholeness. His ruling will grow, and there'll be no limits to the wholeness he brings. He'll rule from the historic David throne over that promised kingdom. He'll put that kingdom on a firm footing and keep it going, with fair dealing and right living, beginning now and lasting always.
Isn't that a cracking piece of scripture? I do sometimes, when I've got my naughty head on, sometimes want to provoke congregations with some of the stuff from the message. And that's one that is just a piece of real right into our situation. That's why I like it, because it does speak into us where we are now, doesn't it? So, what other things came out of your conversation?
Easy compassion as against hard compassion. So, like, easy compassion is you volunteer in the food bank because it's a good thing to do and people are helped and so on, and you can feel good about that. Hard compassion is going to the sources of why somebody's at the food bank and what your place is in that.
Yeah, thank you, David. We'll talk about some of that tonight when we talk about the Acts 2 reading, and there's a link with the Acts 2 reading, obviously, and we'll talk about some of that very idea tonight. So, yes, thank you. Go on, there's
We were saying that we've moved so far away from God's government and peace as a country, as a nation, that actually there can be nothing but increase, because it would be very difficult to see it get any less because of how we've embraced everything else, and everything else about culture and other religions and everything else this country's embraced. We've forgotten who we are, we've forgotten about God's government and God's peace in this country. So there has to be an increase for God to rule again in this country, for this nation again to see him in a true light as it used to.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point, Paul. I was talking to somebody this week who is retired, a minister who's retired. I've done a pre-retirement course. When you're a Methodist minister, you have to do it within a few years of you saying you'd retire. And so I've been doing it this week, and I was talking to somebody who I didn't even think were anywhere near the same age as me, and he's ready for retirement. And he's had a national role within the life of our church, and he was saying that when he retires, he's going to do all the stuff in retirement that he thinks the government should have been doing when they've been in power. And I said, do you not think that's a bit arrogant? And he said, no, because we can't go any lower, can we? We can't sink any lower in terms of how we respond, both individually and corporately, business, and also every level within society, you know. So his task now in retirement is to change the world. So it's not bad. Yeah. Oh, you know it. Go on, there was a Colin, go on.
Just following on from that, we were saying how much there's an individual responsibility. We may be a voice shouting in the wilderness, but if we're not shouting anything, then we're not getting anywhere. And we perhaps ought to be more concerned about what God thinks than what other people think.
That led us on to Elijah. I was talking about Elijah. Because Elijah, there he was in front of all those prophets, the lone voice. And he said, God, he was taunting them. Go on, do it. Do what you're best. Do everything you can do. And then he calls down his God, who he knows to be the answer to everything that he needs in the prayer. And God then, the supernatural power of God, comes down. And that's what we just don't get. We don't see the supernatural power of God.
Well, part of it is we don't understand the Old Testament a lot of the time. We concentrate a lot on the new and forget a lot of the old. And I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody when I'm looking at the lectionary. I think, well, what's the Old Testament reading? You know, so I've already got a thing in my head that's saying it's not going to be relevant. But there is so much that is relevant, isn't it, really, that we can make an application to it.
Yeah, we'll say Deborah's going to say something.
Yeah,
Sorry?
it was all, David almost said what we've been talking about and what we've been thinking about. But Sharon and I mentioned the difference between being and doing. And you have to know how to be with God before you can do for God. Because if you love God and you're doing without any thought for your being, why are you doing it, really?
Yes.
Because it's for it to be effective, and you know, this is going on forever and ever. We have to know how to be with God to be able to do effectively.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody over here? Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, we looked at this passage and saying if Isaiah came today, he's saying the sort of things that he says in Isaiah 5.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
much of Isaiah 4 and 5 is
Yeah.
really relevant to our own society. But alongside that, with judgment, also needs to come this message of hope.
Absolutely.
Because we seem to be in a society where we've lost hope. And we need those two things, we need judgment and hope
We do.
to put the two. And we also wondered why he left off the last part of this verse, which is the zeal of the Lord will accomplish this.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, good point. Why did I? I'll have a think about that later. There was a question at the back. Comment at the back.
Yeah, we were touching on similar things to what people have talked about. So the call on us not to just do and go and work in food banks and all the rest of it, but actually to be speaking out like Isaiah does. Like you said, you know, why aren't we challenging it verbally? And also on the being with God as well. One of the words that struck me two words actually, the government. What you were saying about do we actually acknowledge God's government over the whole of our lives as individuals, but as churches? And if we do, the other thing you said was about builders and architects. We're builders. We need the architect's instructions. And if we're not making time and space to listen to what those are for us in our place where God's put us, we're going to be constantly trying to come up with plans and ways of dealing with stuff which aren't necessarily His. So the being with God, you know, the making space to listen to what He wants to do, He wants us to do for Him. And also the increase. What a fabulous word. It's not static, it's going to increase. What hope is in that?
Absolutely.
We were talking about some of the encouragement that comes out of the verse. It's, you know, I think you were talking about it yourself. You've got the Old Testament. A lot of people struggle to see the connect between the Old and the New Testament because they're very different writing styles almost within them. And then we see a disconnect between the New Testament and today. We try and disconnect it. It's like, oh, it was wonderful seeing what's going on in Acts, but we don't see that today. Or it was very strange to see that in the Old Testament, but we don't see that in the New Testament. We almost cut it up, and yet this overarching promise from Isaiah, and you've got it all the way from David's throne in the Old Testament to the fulfillment of Jesus in the New Testament, and that power of government will go on into your time as well. And it's standing on those testimonies and realising that in faith that's going to empower you further. I mean, maybe Psalm 119, verse 99, where David writes, I have more understanding than all my teachers, for your testimonies and my meditation. Having all of that collective knowledge together, meditation of Isaiah, from Abraham to David to Jesus to us today, from John Wesley and all the revivalists since then, we stand on all that with such faith, knowing that God's government can increase and will increase. Amen.
The interesting thing about that, of course, is that we're very privileged, aren't we? We've got the Old and New Testament, we've got our Bibles, we've got the history and the knowledge and teachers. When Isaiah said this, he was almost speaking to a vacuum. He was speaking to a people who were completely lost it, really. If you look at what was happening in Israel at the time, with and he's speaking to this, and you can understand, why the people sort of thought to themselves, what on earth is this guy going on about? Why is he talking to us like this? What's he got to do with us? What's he got to do with our lives? What? You can completely understand it. But then you can also understand why people say exactly the same today when we say things like, Jesus is Lord. Are we speaking into that sort of same vacuum? Yeah, go on.
Going back to the architects and builders that we touched on, that some of us have decided that we are the architects and we're building barriers where Christ has proclaimed freedom. We've taken the blueprints and we've gone, well, actually, I don't want to include those people because I don't really like them, or I think they're doing something wrong. So we'll just move that bit out and change the blueprint. And so we stop doing that and actually listen to what God wants. We're never going to be the voice that God wants us to be.
That's right. Absolutely. Something great, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that I think this passage sort of needs to remind us about who we are as God's church. If actually we're going to allow the Lord to build his church through us, then we need to be clear about our own identity. And I think there's a big problem within the church that the church is not clear about who it is and what its role is. And we need to be very clear about who we are in God, who we are in Christ. Because he actually gives the world he gives us a very clear message, a clear gospel to speak to the world, both in actions and in words. So I think we have to be very clear about our own identity. And there's a lot of confusion, I think, in the church about who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a personal confusion and there's a collective corporate confusion as well about church.
Yeah.
And people in the church have got a different view than the people, let's call them outside the church, people who are de-churched or unchurched, have got a very different concept of what it is, of what church is and what Christians are and what people of faith are. Dennis Prager was a Jewish writer, a well-known Jewish writer, and he always told a story when this sort of question came up. He said to a group of people, imagine where you live. I live in Nottingham. So I'm walking down Nottingham, down a road in Nottingham at 11 o'clock at night, and my car is about 300 yards away on a dimly lit street, and I'm on my own, but coming towards me are a group of about 10 or 12 young lads, jeans, leather jackets, looking quite hard. And they're coming towards me, and my car is beyond them. And Prager used to say, if you ask people, if you knew that those lads coming towards you had just come out of a Bible study group, would your attitude change?
Yeah.
Exactly. Your attitude would change.
I think my money would still be on you though, Loraine.
Thank you, Andrew. They're real friends. But you get the point, don't you? You know, the thing about it is that there used to be a time when he said that, he's been dead like donkey's years, but his writing's powerful writing stuff. When he wrote that, faith, whatever faith, had a sort of, there was a concept around faith of what people understood people of faith to be. That's not there now in quite the same way as it used to be. You know, people are afraid almost to come into churches. You know, people are afraid of it's because they think there's something odd goes on. You know, but the reality is that we live cheek and jowl with people of no faith and faith in our communities, all of us, wherever we live, whether we live in a bit posh bit of Nottingham called Ed Walton, or whether we live in the Meadows, which is the really deprived area of Nottingham. It makes no difference. There are people around us who see and must see something different. Must see something different for us as church. Must. Anything else you? Go on, the lady right in blue.
Thinking of the establishing and upholding, and I think we should be upholding the Word of God. We should be living it and upholding it and establishing it. You know, that people will know, like you say, that we are children of God. And we're afraid, you know, that was a period when I was afraid to tell anyone about Jesus. But I'm not now. Having done it a few times, it gets easier to really start a conversation about Christ. And so we need to be doing that and establishing and upholding the Word of God in our nation.
Modelling something.
Modelling it, yeah, living it. And it's Christ in us, a hope of glory, isn't it? It's like we had a prophecy spoken over us when we were in America saying I want you to realise this is important. It's very important. It is my presence and not your performance. And it is. It's Christ coming to expression through us. It is.
Yeah, I think we're talking a little bit about change, shifting culture, and obviously there's different cultures around the world. And I think it's still worth giving thanks to God for the fact that we live in a kingdom ourselves, which was established as a Christian kingdom, and all of our laws and institutions were established on Christian principles, and that still holds some sway underneath, and that does filter through, and still continues to filter through our sort of culture and population. For example, the food bank in Grantham is just been constantly, year after year. I'm just amazed how we're blessed by the general population of people giving, both financially and in kind, to that. Volunteers. And it started as a church project, but since, it's a light touch as far as actually what the churches need to give, because it's the general population that give into that. And that's to do with the sense of, injustices in the world and wanting to make things.
Have you shared with this group about the cross?
No, I don't think I have. No.
All right, just share a little bit about the cross. Alfred Lane. Come here and share. This is particularly relevant, I think.
Okay. Well, some will know that one of the things that we do at Harrowby Lane is that every morning we meet for prayer, and one of the key things that we do is declare blessings out over the community. And one of the things we wanted to do was to develop a garden of blessing, and there's several elements to that. There's food which is grown, which people can cover for themselves. So that's a grace offering to the community. There's blessings on the flags outside that speak what we say inside. It's a busy road, people going by all the time, and so as they go by, they receive the blessing. May God bless you. May the Lord smile on you. May God give you peace. And then Loraine was there to open it. One that someone in the community commissioned him to make a cross. So we planted this cross on the corner, so it's seen by loads of people as they go by. And underneath the cross, we've buried loads of blessings. Loads of blessings. We had some time just thinking about what God wants us to put underneath. So we tried to picture anybody from the community who wanted to come and receive from God what it is that we need to say. So there's blessings about healing in lots of different forms, about inner healing, about provision over their lives. So it's all buried underneath the cross. And so we established it there, put it there, and well, it's been remarkable just seeing people come and making use of it. And it just stands there as a feature. And we've had just people coming off the streets who just want to find God. And we don't need to do anything almost. Just say, come and sit here, we bless you, and just leave them with God, and they are blessed, and they find God, and their lives are turned around. And, you know, I've baptised several people who just, that's been their experience. It's just incredible what God is doing. Zeal of the Lord will accomplish this.
Other things, other comments. Okay.
Just reflecting on the increase of his government, and I think what Connie just said at the back, and tying in with what David said about having because it's a year of testimony in the Methodist Church this year, I also do, I'm sure many of us do, a God's lot of where he's got to work. And just thinking really about the increase of his government, about our individual responsibility and the power in the individual person. A sadness really, but recently one of the services that I led, somebody said, oh, the comment, it's insignificant really, and I probably shouldn't mention it, but ... I was at somewhere and we went round a training session, went round the room, and my name is, what's something about you? And he said, I didn't say it, but someone in the room said, my name is, and I'm a Christian. And he said, I sat there all nervous, and then I plucked up the courage to say, actually, I'm a Christian. And after he'd said it, out of the 20, 8 people actually said, actually, I'm a Christian. Actually, I'm a Christian. And he said, it's probably nothing really. And I said, why are you saying it's nothing really? That's a wonderful thing, to share in here, but I'm just thinking that's the increase of his government really, because the sadness is that he nearly didn't mention it in God's law, because it's nothing really to say. It's everything to say, and it is the increase, and it is the importance of us sharing in the everyday. And he said he found it so difficult that was such a big thing for him to be able to go out into the world and be able to just say, I'm a Christian. But what power he found, and that other people got the power from being able to say, I'm a Christian. That was his big step. And I just think, if that is our first step, it's easier for us as Christian leaders to go around the collar on that, because we pushed through that barrier a long time ago, and it's who we are as people. But when you're not in that position, to just be able to say in the world, in the outside world, without protection of the church around you, I am a Christian. That's the first step, and that increases, increases his government and gives his power.
Absolutely.
Establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness, that we are to stand on the truth which is in Christ, and that from the top government that we are seeing wise, that they put a spin on things, but for people to see that we are people of faith, that what we do say is the truth. And that's, many people have been told things and yet have really struggled with, especially with the church. You sometimes look at the church and the church has not done what it's supposed to do. So really to stand up and to be known to walk the walk and talk the talk in Christ Jesus. We should be who we are, who we say we are.
Through all the Brexit stuff, I hate to use the word, but because we've moved on now to coronavirus, but through all the Brexit stuff, our MPs were having a really tough time. And we've got a number of MPs, Methodist MPs, in the House, both houses. And a group of us, a group of Methodist women, decided that what we would do is we would write to our women MPs, because we'd heard that they were under a great deal of stress and it was really difficult. So that's what happened. And it's the letters that have come back have been very, very powerful, really, in the way in which, as Christians within both houses, they've really struggled with a lot of what was going on at the time and how much pressure, 20-hour days and, weekends that were just like every other day of the week, and the enormous pressure that they're on to make decisions. I would sometimes forget that bit of it, that a lot of our MPs are Christians and are struggling with a lot of what's happening as well. Anything else? Yeah.
We had a debate in our group. Some of us felt that if Isaiah was talking today, he'd be shouting a lot louder and wanting to proclaim, wake us up, and some others of us felt that actually when God did want to wake us up, he came as a child. And that we are to be the light and God in this world. And there's that dichotomy between the ways of doing things.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I did wonder when I was preparing this morning, I did wonder about starting not actually with Isaiah but with some modern day prophets. But I was struggling. Because where are they? Where are the Isaiahs, today? Yeah, that's a good example of one. But is she a prophet of faith? She's a prophet, there's absolutely no doubt about it. What she's saying about creation, the way that she's engaging young people and older people. So where are the prophets? Where are the Isaiahs of this world? Where are the people that are saying these sort of things into our context today? I want to finish by telling you a story. I'm finishing a bit early, but that's fine. I'm sure you won't mind a relaxing time. I alluded to the fact that I was president a couple of years ago, and came as a complete surprise to me. For about 3 years, friends have been saying to me, well, you must put your name forward for president. You can't just say I want to be president, you have to be nominated, and then all conference votes. And for about 3 years, friends have been saying to me, you should put your name forward, and I was saying no. And in the end, I laid a fleece, because it takes me, I'm very obstinate really. So it took a while, but I laid a fleece and I said, right, okay, Lord, if 3 people who don't know that I have been praying about this, and have been saying things to me, if 3 people say, then okay, I'll do it. That's always you can either consider it a good move or a bad move. But anyway, I did that. It happened once, so that's okay. It's only once, so I won't be 2 more. It happened twice. I'm getting a bit more worried about it. But then, 7 days before conference, nobody said a word, and I was thinking, great, 2. But just before conference in our district, we have a meeting where people come together who've been nominated to go to conference. They talk about the agenda. And one person, we'd had the meeting and everyone was going to the loo and grabbing the coats and all the rest of it. And one person was in the last of going to the toilet and then went. And as I was closing the door, she went, "Oh, Loraine, I've been meaning to mention it to you." And literally, she was out the door. I was seconds from closing it. and she said, "I've been thinking, you really should put your name forward for president." And I could have sworn. Because I knew that she was the third person. So I rang the friend up and said, "It's happened. It's happened. 3 people mentioned it. Ain't got a clue. You've been my doing it for 3 years. I'm going to have to do it." So anyway, when it all happens, I looked at the names on the ballot sheet and thought, "Oh well, that's it. Relax. It's not going to happen." So when the Secretary of Conference then phones you, I'm in Pizza Hut in Paddington, and the phone rings, and the 3 friends I was with, I've got a photograph on my study wall to remind me of the moment. They'd already said to me, "When he phones, we know we can't ask you, because we know you can only tell John. So we won't ask you. We won't say anything. And we know I can't play poker either." So they said, "We won't ask you, to be fine." So when he actually phoned and told me, I sort of was silent for a minute and then said, "Oh, right, okay." And he said, "Loraine, you are going to accept, aren't you?" So I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to accept," thinking, "Oh my life, what have you got me into, God?" Anyway, it all happens, and within a couple of weeks, it actually sinks in, the reality. And so one of the first meetings you have is with All We Can. All We Can, our Methodist arm for, it used to be, what did it used to be? Yeah, Methodist. So anyway, you have a meeting, and Graham, who is now the CEO, said to me, "We're thinking, because you've lived in Sierra Leone, we'll take to Sierra Leone." Great, no problem. We get 2 visits, 1 visit to a world church and 1 visit with All We Can. So he said, "We think we might be going to Sierra Leone." Is that okay? Great, yeah, can we go back to where I lived? Yeah, no problem. Anyway, about 3 weeks after this, he rings me up, "Loraine, we're not going to Sierra Leone. We think we might go to Uganda. Is that okay?" "Yeah, that's fine." I already knew I was going to Fiji, because I'm responsible for the Fijian church in the Methodist Fijians over in this country. So I knew that I was already going. That had already been planned long before the presidency. So I said, "Yeah, Uganda's absolutely fine." So I thought, "Loraine, you've lived in Africa. You know about Africa. You know about the people. You know about the food. You know about all the stuff that we need to all the time." Nothing, absolutely nothing prepared me for what I experienced when I was in Uganda. One day they took us to Busey Island, which is, you have to go across Lake Victoria to get to Busey Island. And I don't do boats. This weren't a boat, it weren't a ship. And if you go on the website, you can see these horrible photographs of me looking absolutely terrified with this big sort of life jacket on to get us across to Busey Island. So we went across Lake Victoria to Busey Island. When we got to Busey Island, the first person we met was the woman in charge of the well. The story of the Samaritan woman at the well suddenly became real. This is a place where you can only get to Busey Island by water, no other way. So when you arrive at Busey Island, all that you see is all the excrement, plastic, paper, rubbish, horrible stuff that you have to get through to get onto the land. So the first thing we do is we meet the woman at the well, and she is responsible for that well. And what all we kind of done is built the well so that the people have fresh water, because otherwise all they would get is the stuff from Lake Victoria. So then they take us to meet Ethel. And Ethel's got this little community. So as we walk into her little community, to our left, my apologies if you've heard this story before, because I've told you before, there's a little shed. And it's about as big as our garden shed. And there's nothing, I can see into this shed, there's absolutely nothing apart from sort of a dirt floor. That's all I can see. And she got really excited because she'd been given 3 things from All We Can. She'd been given a shower, which was literally a pull string and a bit of tubing to wash. She'd been given a sort of little toilet, which is literally a hole in the ground with sort of 3 or 4 bricks around it. And she'd been given a tippy tap. And our tippy tap is, you know these plastic containers that you can get your de-icer in? No, not your de-icer, you screen wash. Plastic bottle like a screen wash. And basically there's a piece of wood on the floor, you press the piece of wood, it pulls a piece of string, and the plastic bottle tips up, and you can wash your hands after you've been to the toilet. And she'd also been given a tank which collected the water, which enabled her to fill her tippy tap. And she was very excited to show us all of this. There was about 9 or 10 children around, and the interpreter asked her about the children. 4 of them were her grandchildren. Her 2 sons and the wives had gone off Busey Island across Lake Victoria to earn money, and they would come back about every 6 or 8 weeks to this little compound. And the rest of the children there, she was looking after, because the people in the village had died and they had nobody. So they died probably of AIDS or infections or all sorts of things. But so that she'd inherited these children. They weren't hers. And they were all happy. They were playing football with Greg, one of our people who All We Can, who went with us. She showed us around with great excitement, thrilled to bits to be showing us the tippy tap and the tank and everything. She was just overwhelmed with the generosity of the people that had provided that for us. I wore my collar, my clerical collar for the visit, and towards the end of the visit, just as we were about to leave, she said to the interpreter, "Can this priest lady pray with me?" And so what happened was, she then knelt down at my feet. Well, that just did for me. You know, and I was saying to her, "No, stand up, I'll just sort of put my hand, you know, just a bit like Paul and Kate did." That's how but she knelt at my feet. And so I then prayed with her. Now, I ain't got a clue what I prayed. I haven't got a clue. I said to Graham afterwards, well, I'm not sure that was such a good prayer. I can't even get my words out because I was so moved by this woman asking me to pray for her. Immediately I said amen, which was obviously a word that she recognised. She jumped up and she ran about 50 yards into this shed. She came running out of the shed, and under her arm she had a mat. It's about this big. And it was rolled up, and she handed it to me. And she said, through the interpreter, she said, "This is my prayer mat. This is now yours." Well, I was a wreck. This woman had absolutely nothing. And she handed me this. I was just overwhelmed by what she had shared from her nothingness. You know, And I am so blessed in comparison to that, to how she was. I don't know whether she was a Muslim, whether she was Hindu, I have no idea what this woman's faith was. But there was something that was recognised about God in that. That was a God moment, a God incident. I have no idea how that woman worshipped. But I know one thing, and that is, she knew the same God as I knew. She might come to him in a different way than I do. But for her, of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne over his kingdom, establish and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forth. Now she might not get those words. I get those words. We have a conservatory in our house. During my presidential year, it became known as the presidential suite. Because wherever I went, I got given something. Some things that will never see the light of day, but were given with generous hearts, and some which will, like Ethel's mat. And I put it just as you walk out of my study into the conservatory. Every time I step foot, actually it's rolled up and over to the corner because I've just done a talk about it. But it's usually there, and every time I step on that mat, I remember her. And I remember her faith. And I remember her commitment to God. Because she was a praying woman. She was a praying woman. I remember her generosity. I remember her hope. I mean, if you ever saw a hopeless situation, then that was it. Yet, she had hope. Her hope was in a tippy tap, and a tank, and a little toilet, and a little shower. That's where her hope was. But also her hope was in the fact that in a moment of encounter, we encountered something in each other, which was God. Let's hope that through this weekend, each one has a moment of encounter with God. That may be when we worship, it might be when we look at a piece of scripture, it might be when we're walking, or in my case, now this afternoon, it might be when you're at the table, engaging in conversations. Well, let's be open to an encounter with God as we share together this afternoon and for the rest of the time that we're together.